people with us here today. We have Dr. Anne Murray from Family Studies and Human Services, and then we have Michael Welsh, who's from anthropology. I always get them mixed up. I'm always like saying archaeologists and anthropology, so I wanted to get it right. They both have been using student groups a lot in their courses, and they're here to share extensively their experiences. So let's welcome them, and we'll begin.
Okay, well, I spoke at one of these a while back about student groups, but mainly talked about how to use the grouping tool, which was new at the time. But this time, Shasti asked me if I could talk a little bit more about the pedagogy, so that's what I'm going to do. When I started using groups, it wasn't because I had done a lot of research and study on how effective they were. It was really out of necessity. I had revamped one of my courses so that everything was structured around a case study, and students were assigned to write a journal assignment every week. And what happened was, after 2 years of reading 20 plus assignments on a weekly basis, I wound up having to have back surgery because I was hunched over grading these papers all the time. So I had to think of something else. So I had this bright idea: I'll put them into groups. And I chose groups of 4, and that cut down the grading from 20 plus to about 5 or 6 a week. And so that was doable. But what I discovered when I started using groups was, first of all, that students seemed to be much more interested in the material and much more engaged in it than when before I'd been doing more of a lecture style of interaction with them in the classroom. Also, students interacted more with each other, and that was because I wasn't doing all the talking. I was giving them time to interact in their groups. They also started to take more responsibility for their learning. They felt more obligation to be there for their groups. They didn't miss class as much. If they had to miss class, they always got with their group to figure out what they missed and how they could make it up. Also, they turned in products of much higher quality, and I think that's because 4 heads are better than 1. They had different perspectives and different knowledge that they brought to bear on the project, and I got better results. So then I decided to do some reading, find out why this was so effective, and I discovered that what I was doing is similar to problem-based learning. And about that time, I think someone came through campus and made some presentations, maybe from Rensselaer or someplace like that, on problem-based learning in medical schools. And I realized that what I was doing was very similar. In that approach, students deal with real-world problems, not artificial problems that are made up for textbooks that have neat solutions. They collaborate in small groups to work on solutions to problems. There's very little direct instruction on the part of the instructor. The instructor is more the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage. And students experience challenges that are more akin to what they're going to experience when they're out in the real world. They'll have ill-structured problems with no right or wrong answer, and it's much more better to prepare them for the real world than some of the neat, pat kinds of problems you get out of a textbook. I also discovered that what I was doing fit under the concept of collaborative learning or cooperative learning, which I think is a broader concept than problem-based learning. And I found some of the key features in this book by Marzano, Pickering, and Pollock that there's a reference on your handout for. One key feature is positive interdependence. Students each have either a unique role or they have a unique set of materials that they bring to the group. No one person can kind of take it over. Everybody has a role to play and contributes, and sometimes this is referred to as a jigsaw method. There's promotive interaction, and by that is meant that students support each other and learn from each other. They're not in competition with each other, at least within the groups. There can be competition between groups. And I find this feature really works well online because students' groups form sort of a support group for them, and they'd feel less disconnected and floating out there in cyberspace because they have a kind of a tight-knit group that they meet with on a regular basis. You build in individual and group accountability. So there's some pieces that students do individually and get credit for, and also there's group products where everyone gets kind of a group score. Students have to work on interpersonal and small group skills. They have to practice active listening and respectful interactions. And one way to help them with that is to provide a rubric, which I think you have a copy of, that kind of suggests ways to interact online to make sure things go smoothly. You try and build in some group processing where you have them think about how well their group is functioning and try and improve performance or resolve problems as they arise rather than kind of bury them until their huge crises arise. Marzano, Pickering, and Pollock summarized some research that's been done on cooperative learning. And some of the conclusions were that cooperative strategies result in more learning by students than individual strategies. Heterogeneous groupings are better than homogeneous groupings. And this, again, I think is because each student brings a different set of skills and expertise to the group, and they teach each other and learn from each other. Small groups are better than large groups, and I learned this by trial and error and settled on 4. I've tried 5, and that's not as good as 3. 2 works, but if one person can't come to class, that leaves one person with nobody to talk to. So I usually go with 3 and 4. And so it was great that some research kind of bore out my own experiences. All of my teaching is online now. I started doing groups on campus, but once I started doing most of my teaching online, I just transferred to that new format. And I use basically 2 main types of groups. I have formal long-term groups where students work on either these weekly journal assignments or some project that's due partway through the semester, like a web page that they're working on, collaborating on together. I also have more informal discussion groups where they come together for a class period and discuss, pros and cons of some sort of policy, or they'll have a debate about an issue, or compare and contrast theories, or they'll help each other on their individual writing assignments. I have a list of tips for online groups. Some of these are mine, and some of them I borrowed from Coe and Rawson, which is a really good book on teaching with practical ideas for teaching online, and there's a whole chapter on groups, online grouping strategies. And I already mentioned this, use heterogeneous groups. In our department, we have 5 different majors: early childhood education, marriage and family therapy, family life education, lifespan human development, and communication sciences and disorders. So I try and, to the extent possible, have only one of each kind in each group, because they each kind of have totally different but related academic backgrounds. So they bring different perspectives to the problems that they're discussing. I always use some sort of online icebreakers early in the semester, because it's kind of hard for students to get to know each other online. So I'll have a thread on the message board for getting to know you, I think is what I call it, where I get people to put some personal information, what they're interested in studying, what their major is, something about their favorite vacations or their hobbies, just something to kind of give people a picture, of the individual. And also I use that profiles tool on K-State Online and try and get them to use a photograph. Some people don't like to do that, but I urge them to, so that everyone has a kind of a visual image of each other. I always provide class time for group meetings, and unlike a lot of people, I require students to log on for 2 hours a week. so there's a synchronous period, and they also do some work asynchronously. But when you provide them with class time, they don't complain about, well, we couldn't get together this week because our schedules didn't mesh. They have to, when they enroll in the class, they have to clear those 2 hours every week for the class. I also give them some sort of structure or framework for how I see them getting the work done. And I talk about options that students have tried in the past and what seems to have worked and what hasn't worked. And then they can kind of pick and choose what strategies their group is going to follow or what procedures. I give them guidelines for group participation, that rubrics for collaborative work that you probably have a copy of is something I post early in the semester. It gives them an idea of, first of all, what they should be doing in order to participate fully, and also what their group members should be doing on a regular basis. And then at the end of the semester, they are asked to evaluate each other using that rubric. Sometimes I assign roles to group members, not individual people, but I'll say, when you get together in your group tonight, you need to appoint a facilitator of the discussion, a timekeeper, and maybe a reporter, somebody who's going to summarize the group's discussion and post it to the message board. I provide as many avenues as possible for them to communicate, and this has been really easy with the new K-State grouping tool, because there's a chat room, a message board, they can email each other, they can share files, there's also a calendar that they can use. I always, in a semester and also in most class periods, have a mix of individual and group activities. I provide a substantial amount of group work that counts towards their final grade, but not so much that it's a majority, because I don't want people to think that their entire career rides on, how this group is going to function. So usually, or in some cases, it'd be as much as 30% of the coursework is based on group work and 70% on individual. Small groups of 2 to 4 students, I already mentioned that. I keep the composition of the groups the same throughout the semester. In the beginning, I played around with kind of reassigning them partway through the semester, and I got a lot of complaints because people had kind of settled into a routine and gotten to know their group members, and it was kind of like a little support group, and then all of a sudden I'm saying, okay, now you're going to work with somebody else. So I don't do that anymore. They stay with the same groups all semester. Although I don't participate in the groups, I supervise them very closely. You can do that with K-State Online because you can lurk in the chat room without them knowing you're there. They always know that I have access to the chat room and all the material on the message board. But on a weekly basis, I monitor that, and I make sure that they're all participating at the level I expect. And if they're not, then I can either email the group or email an individual if I think they're, causing a problem. At the beginning of the group work, I have them discuss as a group what their expectations are in terms of when they're going to have work done and when they're going to review each other's work and so on. So everyone knows at the outset what the ground rules are. I have them evaluate or reflect on their own functioning as a group on a regular basis. And I often use the survey tool for this. I'll ask on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your group doing? And then I'll follow up with an open-ended question. Okay, what could you do to improve the functioning of your group? And then I follow up and say, and what are you going to do about it? So it puts the responsibility back on them to resolve issues. And finally, I have them evaluate each other's contributions at the end of the semester, if it's a semester-long project. And they use the rubric that you have a copy of. And at least in one course, 10% of the students course grade is based on how their group members evaluate them. So they know that they have to really satisfy the expectations of the group. They can't just blow it off, or they could lose a whole letter grade. And there's some references. The first one and the last one are online references on problem-based learning. And the other two are books. The Cohen-Rossen book is, I mentioned, is a really good one for practical ideas for teaching online, and has a chapter on cooperative learning. And the Marzano, Pickering, and Pollock book is not specifically about online learning, but it has a chapter on collaborative groups with some ideas. So cool.
Any questions for Anna?
Yes.
Could you discuss specifically or share one of the projects that they might do to give us an idea? What
Okay.
type of discussions, what the topic might be, what your final expectations would be, maybe what the assignment would be?
Well, the class I mentioned where I have weekly journal assignments, the way that works is that they read a section of a case study, and then they have usually 4 questions, very open-ended questions about the case study. They get together and discuss all 4 questions, and they each have to post a couple of paragraphs on the message board about how they would address this question, and they have to comment on others, on at least one other person's posting, and then they get together in the chat room and decide who's going to take responsibility for which question. So everyone has given input, but one person is going to do the actual writing, and then say by Sunday night of the week before it's due, they upload a draft that the other group members read and comment on, and then each student submits their final version after revisions. So that goes on throughout the entire semester. I've had another type of project where students work on a web page together, and there's certain areas of content that I want to see on that web page. So they usually wind up assigning roles, like somebody looks at the research, somebody looks at the parenting books, somebody looks at the cultural information, somebody takes charge for learning how to, do the web page, somebody with an artistic flair to think about graphics and, design and so on. And so then they come together and, produce the web page. In another class I have it's a course on assessment, and we're expected to screen all the children at the child care center that we run. So students online, a group of students do this, and they do all the planning online, and then we show up one morning and spend 4 hours testing these kids. And so the group work is really them coming together to do the test, and then each one individually writes up their own experiences that then gets graded. So, I mean, it varies a lot depending on the learning experience I want them to have. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
What level classes do you usually teach?
Graduate level. The assessment class has undergraduates as well as graduates, and I find that the graduate students really help, mentoring the undergraduates through the process.
It was the same. What level student?
I do casework with my students since it is a health degree. Do you give them the cases, or have you ever had them go find cases and then talk about it?
No, I give them the cases,
Okay.
just because you don't know what they're going to come up with, and I have certain things that because this is a course in child development, and there's certain things I have to cover.
Right.
And the case that I use is just perfect, I couldn't have written one better, and it's a real case too, so.
Are your students generally in different locations? Are they in different cities or
Um,
distance?
The majority of them are in Kansas, but some of them are an hour or two away. But I've had students like on the West Coast and the East Coast, and also in Japan and in the Middle East. So they mostly the courses are to serve students in Kansas, but if I have open spaces and somebody from, Japan wants to take it, that's fine, with me. But I'm not gonna eliminate the synchronous aspect of it for them, because, that's really not the main mission. We have a lot of students who work full-time during the day. They have little kids at home, and they live an hour away from campus, and so it's really great that they can, log on from home and do the course without having to drive here and park and battle the weather in the winter and that kind of thing. So.
Have you experimented with video conference discussions?
No, I haven't. I haven't done that. I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, I've had guest speakers, like speakers come into the chat room where we, the students are prepared in advance and they ask questions and get answers, and we've done that. One reason why I haven't really done a lot with like live lecture, for example, is because if a student is late coming to class or misses and has to make up, I just think it's so much easier for them to read through the chat room than have to watch this long thing that might not really be that interesting, if you're not present at the time, and might not have that much good information. I don't know, has anybody else had experience with video teleconferencing that they?
I do a lot of that.
You do?
And I was just thinking, you mentioned guest speakers.
Yeah.
It's an ideal tool. The DCE supports WIMBA.
Yes.
And
Well, when WIMBA comes, now I think I might change my tune.
I've been using WIMBA now for probably a year.
Uh-huh.
And I do a lot of high school, community college outreach
Yeah.
classes. And, it's just an excellent tool. I use it as kind of my students that can't come to lab.
Right.
They can log on and just come into my virtual office. And we can communicate that.
Is it archived? I mean,
You can, yeah.
Yeah.
You decide whether or not you want to archive it.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I have done is I've videotaped like a guest speaker, and then I, put that up online so students can watch that, but it's not live.
Do any of them have trouble with their equipment being able to access that?
Well,
Or how,
Yeah, that's
I
the
don't
other
know
thing.
if it's a reality or a made-up barrier, but.
Yeah, I think less and less so, but you're right. I mean, the simpler you can make it, the less likely they're going to have problems.
That's what
you know.
yours, as you described it,
Yeah.
sounds adaptable no matter what environment you have.
Right,
Except for the synchronous part, you have to be there during that
Right,
unique time, but.
The rest of it is pretty. I do have little small video clips that run with Real Player, and it's really great that we have such good tech support here, because in the beginning of the semester, about every other thing I say is call tech support for the first like 2 weeks, and then everything gets resolved, and everything seems to work. So.
Yeah, and just like with WIMBA, I mean, it's a window-based, it's a browser-based system, so, I mean, if anybody has a web browser, which probably 99% of our students do, they can access it, and it's not an issue.
And it's WIMB.
WIMBA, yeah, WIMBA.
Oh, WIMB, thank you.
But can we use that now, or is that only certain people allowed to use it?
It's available. Just go, you have to go through DCE to get an account.
Actually, that's through the Office of Mediated Education
Yeah,
that
okay.
provides the services. It's in a test pilot mode right now and should be available for general use across campus in the fall.
In the fall.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I've been recruiting a lot of people for you, so.
That's good.
Does
Does anybody else have any questions for them? If not, then thank you. We'll move on to our next guest speaker.
Okay. I think this time last year I was here and I talked about groups in my big class. I have classes of 200 and 400 people in Introduction to Cultural Anthropology. And I have great success with K-State Online groups function in those classes. And this year, while I'm teaching that class, I have this great break where I have 10 hand-selected students taking a digital ethnography class. And the whole goal of the class is to really push the envelope of what digital technology can do for teaching as well as for doing anthropology. So what we do in anthropology is we write ethnographies about people throughout the world, and so the idea is how can we use all these different technology to represent people in ways other than just in a narrative book format. So we're really trying to push the envelope of what technology can do, and along the way we discovered ways of collaborating with each other as a group that I think will be really beneficial, and it's stuff that's outside of K-State Online right now, but I think it can be integrated into K-State Online in really interesting ways and quite easily, actually. You don't have to go as far as we did because we're really trying to push the envelope, and I wouldn't suggest everybody doing this type of thing. As we started doing this, we started encountering this buzzword that you guys may have heard, which is Web 2.0. Has anybody heard that term or not heard that term? A lot of people haven't heard it. I had never heard it until 6 weeks ago, and since I've heard it, I've decided that we're in the midst of a total revolution in our culture, and I'm pretty excited about this type of stuff. And it's very interesting what's going on with it. If I could just briefly demonstrate what I think Web 1.0 is about, and I'll try to tell you what Web 2.0 is about and what it can do for teaching. If you go back to Yahoo really sort of made its basis with categories. Like people started going to Yahoo in the 90s when the internet opened up because you could find things through these categories. But these categories are made by a small group of people who decide what the categories are, decide what websites go into what categories. And the revolution that's occurring right now, the transformation, is that people are starting to realize that the web is really different than a file cabinet. It's different than a bookshelf. You can do a lot of different things with it that you can't do with physical objects. And a website is not, in a sense, it's not really a physical object. It can be many places at once. So there's no need for these categories. You can search it, you can do all kinds of things. I'm going to talk about tagging in just a second, which is really different than categories, and I think really exciting for things we might want to do in our classes. So this is what I would call a Web 1.0 site. CNN.com represents another aspect of Web 1.0, that is that there is these massive media conglomerates, you might say, who produce information, and then other people are out there consuming the information, and so there's this production line in that way. But this is already transforming, and so some of you may have your own little websites that actually take things from CNN and put it on your own website. This is like from an RSS feed. If anybody uses like My Yahoo or Google, like iGoogle or whatever it's called, this is NetVibes. It's another form of that. It takes information from CNN and actually puts it right here, updates it constantly. So I have this site that basically gives me all the news that I'm interested in immediately on my own website. So that's one thing that we're doing in the class. That basically I required all the students to set up something like this. I required all my students to use Firefox because it has all these great additions that I'll be talking about in just a second. But there's two more things about Web 2.0 that are very interesting. One is illustrated very nicely by Wikipedia, and that is the idea that suddenly there's not just one or a group of very powerful corporations producing the content of the web. Now Wikipedia actually can be edited by anybody at any time. If I wanted to edit this right now, all I'd have to do is click edit right here, and I could actually make a change and it would appear immediately. But there's such a large community of people working on Wikipedia that if I put up something like atrocious, it almost immediately gets taken down because somebody will see it and say, oh, this has to be edited. So Wikipedia is quite amazing in the sense that it's really built up by users, and yet it turns out that for the most part, it's very reliable information. Another aspect of Web 2.0 are blogs, and some of you may have heard the talk on blogs recently and what blogs can do. And here you can see when you post something, blogs really allow anybody to produce a website because it's so easy. The templates are all there. You just type in the content, push. It's as easy as sending an email, and it goes up on the web here. And then people can comment back, and you can see there's a run of comments. You can then create an RSS feed, which goes back to your private website. And you can see here, as soon as somebody makes a comment on that blog, I see it. As anybody makes a posting, I see it there. So in this class, we were thinking about how can we exploit all of this stuff to collaborate in new ways. And so we created our own website. It's called mediatedcultures.net. And this is our class here. It's just 10 really outstanding students who are really into this stuff. So I might not recommend this just for any class, but this is a really special kind of class to explore this. And what we did is we basically tried to build our own CMS, which is like a content management system. And what this does is it allows us we have our own blog, and if I see if it'll, this is just a real simple blog that we put on here. We have our own wiki, so we can collaborate on the wiki. And you can see here there's a shout box, which allows you to see if there's anybody else online, you can immediately shout out to them, and if they're on this website, it'll immediately show up, and they'll see that you're trying to contact them, and you can have discussions there. Let's see here. We have lots and lots of different things on this website. This website is built on a content management system, which is called Zoops. There's hundreds of these things that you can use. I won't get too much into that, but I'll just mention that what you're actually seeing here is not really one website. It's actually many different modules. It's almost like the Legos of website building. So like this is a module. This is a little block here. This shout box is a block. There's a calendar. That's another block. This is the blog. That's another block. And so on. Our sandbox or the wiki is another block, and so on. And so if you're interested in this, you can go to Zoops. Zoops is open source, so it's totally free. And you can download Zoops itself. You install it on your server. And then you can go through these hundreds and hundreds of blocks and build up your website exactly how you want to do it. I wanted to just show you briefly how we're using it. And I think the most powerful tool we found is the wiki, because it allows us to collaborate on this project that we've been working on. The Nasarima project, Nasarima is American, spelled backwards. So we're trying to study the Nasarima as an anthropologist would and try to understand ourselves in a way. So each of the students has their own section, and any of the students can edit this page or any other page at any time. So a student can go to, this is Nick's project here, and you can see there's a comment section at the bottom so that other students can chime in and say, hey, maybe you want to look at this, and change and make changes in this way. They can make suggestions. Or a student can come in here and say, like, well, maybe Nick needs to think about this, and they'll actually edit it, and I can actually go in, I can actually make a change right now, and it would show up on Nick's page. This is really great for people working in groups on one single document because they can edit the work at any time. And you can actually go backstage, so to speak, and see the whole history of revisions. So if you feel like the latest revision wasn't very good, you can go back and grab the latest revision and update it from there. Now, the wiki is very powerful. We've had a lot of good luck with that. I wanted to take you outside of Mediated Cultures, this website that we've created, and also show you some tools that you can integrate into any website that are really, I think, just remarkably powerful for what we're trying to do. The first one is we try to get, for years we told students to not do research on the internet, and I think that is now out the window because now there's hundreds of journals online, like excellent information is online. And so, for example, here I can search Anthrosource, and I'll just do a search for blog, and you can see there's a number of articles on blogging, and I'll just select a small one here to illustrate this. And now, so here I am at this site, and I think, oh, this is very interesting. I want my students to read this. Well, normally I'd have to copy the address and send it to my students. Now instead, I can just click this little button here, which says blog it, and it will actually opens up a window, and I can just click on my students and I can say, well, here's a thing on, we call it mediated culture, like anything blogs and those types of things, we call it mediated culture. So I just do that and I publish it, and that will immediately show up on the blog back at Mediated Cultures. So when students are back on Mediated Cultures and they click on the blog, they immediately see that article, and I could have typed in something about, you know, go check this out for these reasons, and they could have seen it there. The other thing I can do while I'm on here is I can click this button that is also easy to add, and I can show you briefly how to do that. And this is a page called Cite You Like, and what it does is it takes the citation from the journal article you were just at and allows you to tag it. And what tagging is different than categorizing in the sense that a journal article is now associated with certain tags. It's almost like coding field notes, if anybody's ever coded field notes. It allows you, they're almost like flexible categories in a way, so that one thing can exist in multiple categories rather than just in one single place. So here I'm going to do this with anthropology, hypermedia, visual anthropology. I'm just making a few tags here, and I'll post that article. And now that goes to my library. Now, if any of my students want to know what I've been reading and maybe what my lectures are based on, they can go right into Cite You Like, and they can see what I've read. I can even take notes on Cite You Like, and they can see what kind of notes I've taken on that article. You can also tag it. The neat thing is you can tag it with something like KSU ANTH 200, which would mean KSU Anthropology 200, and students would have a reading list that's tagged right from Cite You Like. So Cite You Like ends up looking like this. This is my library here, but you could just do a tag search for KSU ANTH 200, and you would get a reading list for my ANTH 200 class. I haven't actually created that yet, but that is possible, and it's a really amazing possibility, I think, for that. Now, this only works with journal articles, but if you happen to find something like a website and you want to tag it, there's another nice little program, and it's called Delicious. And Delicious also has a tag up here, and you can tag it. And so I'll just go ahead and tag this film, video, save it. And now that's tagged, and I could even put in here, I could say for, colon, and then I could put the name of somebody else, like one of my students. I could just put Kyle Clip as one of my students. And I'll immediately go to Kyle because I know Kyle would be interested in this website. And all Kyle would do is go to his Delicious, and these are my links that I've stored up over time. And I can go to my links for me, and you can see Kyle's actually sent me a whole bunch in the last few days here that I haven't had a chance to look at. And so it's actually a way of collaborating online. All of these tools are very simple ways that you can embed right into your Firefox browser that allow you to communicate with other people and collaborate and so on. The way I see this working back into K-State Online is all you'd have to do on K-State Online is create a link. It's very easy to create a link. I think most of you guys probably know how to do that. And you just would put in that website address, delicious / Mike Wesch, and then you might put / the name of your class if you've been using that tag, and it will go to that list of websites and readings. So instead of, it makes storing and collecting websites and information for your students a lot easier. It becomes just a matter of you find it, and then you just push the button, and it's there. So the way you do these, if you're interested, is you just go to Cite You Like, and you can register here, and there's a nice tutorial on how to do it. The other site is Delicious, and again, there's a nice tutorial there that you can follow. So that's the basics of my spiel that I was just excited about all this stuff and I wanted to tell you guys. So are there any questions about
Is this password protected, or does the world have access?
mediated cultures? It is, you have to register to see a lot of it, and then once you're registered, then me and the students, we're all like the webmasters, and we can see who you are, and then we decide what level of access you would get. And for our sandbox, there's actually, the students sometimes post interviews which need to be protected. So all they do is they just, when they create their wiki page, they just select private content, and then only they can see it. They can select group content, and then all of us can see it, like myself and the other project members, or they can select open content, and then the whole world can see it. And so that's basically, there's a lot of permissions levels worked into it.
Can you upload files to store, or,
Yeah,
you
yeah. Most of that, you can do it either, you could actually make a, you can put a block on here that allows people to upload files. And then you can also, if you don't have the block, you can always do it from the administration level. And I actually give my students administration access because part of the class is actually learning how to use these tools. And so they can come back here and load things up as well.
This is free?
Well, the Zoops is free. The only issue is that the standard K-State servers can't deal with a database-backed website, and this is basically a database that then gets filtered through and appears on the screen through all these filters. And currently, the basic K-State servers can't do that, and so we actually, for $60 a year, we grab this domain plus a server that can do it. And so that's what we're doing right now for this class. But I think there are K-State servers that can do this. It's just whether or not we have access to those is another issue.
That thing where the students would collaborate together and constantly change, you said it's developed by wiki. Is it, how do you, where do you find, is it wiki a site that you go and register for?
Well, wiki is a type of website, and it basically it's a site that anybody can edit. And the most popular example is this Wikipedia, which I showed earlier. And there's I wonder if you could do like, there's probably there's usually like free wiki space, and if you just look up free wiki space on Google, I think you'll probably find a lot of stuff, wiki hosting and things like that. There is a big advantage to going another direction than what we did. We tried to put everything into one site. There's actually a big advantage to using a separate wiki on one site and then a blog on another site and so on. It's cleaner, and then you can use like the very top end blog and the very top end wiki, because those are all powered by different softwares. And if you try to put it all together, you're sort of at the whims of whatever's available. And so, yeah.
I like your assessment of the difference between Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. It strikes me that in the educational use of the web, there's a striking difference that we're really just on the cusp of seeing.
Yeah.
With K-State Online the way it is now, and other course management, learning management systems out there, there was a strong sense that you would go somewhere and you create something, and then when you're all done, you take that something and you put it inside and you publish it out to your students through a
Right.
system like that. And that's very much how those things are structured. But with Web 2.0, or what will eventually be the next generation of the of educational websites, I anticipate students being very involved in the
Yeah.
creation and management of the content. This concept of groupings that we're talking about today playing a strong role in that. Collaborative education by several different instructors using these Web 2.0 concepts.
Yeah, it's really exciting, I think. And it changes the way you think about web development, because now you're trying to create a structure that facilitates community rather than trying to create a structure that facilitates one person delivering content. And so you want to create structure that facilitates ways of people connecting. And
Right.
it's amazing to me, some of the best software out there for doing this is actually what our students are using. Things like Facebook and MySpace, and those are great places to learn. They're learning about life in those and social life in those places. But it strikes me that we could use those spaces actually to do some pretty interesting learning activities too. I think.
these are the discussions that are going on right now for what should the next version of Axio be, which
Yeah.
is a system that K-State Online runs on, and that'll be coming out in August of, a year from August. And
Yeah.
there are ongoing discussions about exactly this being sort of the focus of the content management and modernizing the content
Yeah.
piece of it. So anyone who's interested in those things, and if you start using these kinds of tools and you're interested in those discussions, there'll be opportunities to get involved with that
That's cool.
discussion.
That's exciting.
And one is like you go out to look for the information, and web 2 is information feed to you. So we just need to find those tools, and then all the information automatically update for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We use a lot about MySpace, a lot of the things,
Yeah.
which is very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
I know that you said your students are really interested in pushing the technology. How much do you think, do you think you learn more from them, or do you have some adaptability problem with all these new different sites that you're learning and adding on to this website?
Oh, so the question is how much do I learn from my students? And
Right. Did you think you had a hard time adapting to all these different technologies?
well, I didn't have all that. I had to have this switch in consciousness, which was I had to stop expecting my students to teach me how to do it and just start realizing that they're just naturally doing all this stuff in their everyday lives. And I just had to tune into it. And so I started asking them, well, what do you do on Facebook? Like, how does that work? And, why would you choose MySpace over Facebook for people who went to MySpace? And then there's all these other sites that are actually much more powerful than MySpace that now my students are starting to migrate over to. And, you just ask them, why are you doing that? And you start to realize, oh, because they facilitate these different things that I would have never thought of. And I think the web is growing exponentially right now because of the ways people are developing ways of just connecting with one another. And then we can capitalize on that as teachers because that's what we want in our classes. We want our students to connect with one another. So.
You mentioned Firefox and its advantages. Can you talk a little bit about those, or anybody
Yeah,
else
well,
in the room?
A lot of these add-ons that you see up here that I've added, you cannot use in Internet Explorer. The other thing I like about Firefox is the tabbed browsing, which allows me normally in Internet Explorer you'd have all these windows open up down here, and once you get over 10 windows then you get a stack of them and it's really hard to navigate through. This just allows me to bounce through. Then there's a number of things you'll actually see as you get into Web 2.0, whether it's the developers just being spiteful towards Microsoft or whatever, they will not make an Internet Explorer compatible version. And so a lot of these really nifty tools just won't work on Internet Explorer. So.
Some might say it's Microsoft getting their own medicine back.
Yeah.
Those extensions, can you tell her about where you get some of those?
Oh yeah, if you just do if you put in Firefox extensions, you can see there's a whole website here. This will be a pretty good start for just about anybody. There's hundreds and hundreds on this website for Firefox. But the two other ones that I think are important are the Delicious and Site You Like, which you get from those websites. The other really cool thing you can do is you can add searches to your Firefox, and I've added WorldCat, which actually will search. This will actually search the K-State library as well. So not only does it bring up the WorldCat number, but then it'll also tell me whether or not it's at K-State. And so right from my browser, I don't have to go to the K-State library website. I can just click up here, and it'll just search the library just like that. I also put an Anthrosource search in here, which allows me to search anthropology journals. So, and I think most disciplines now probably have a Firefox add-on like that. So.
Where do you see this all going? I mean, you said you're trying this with just one of your classes and these 10 break students.
Yeah.
Now that you've learned and this development is your responsibility,
Yeah.
where do you see yourself going?
I'd say next semester when I start class, even in my class of 400 people, I'm going to require that they do Firefox, that they set up, I'm going to have them go through and set it all up just like I have it set up here, so that they have the tag button, they have the Cite You Like button, and as they do their research, I'm going to have them tag it KSU, ANTH 204 or 200, the name of the class. And so I'll be able to see what they're relating to the class immediately, and it'll be build a huge resource base, yeah. And I find that really exciting.
This is all really exciting because we're really going in some really cool directions. But I work in disabled student services, and my job is going to be to make sure that all this stuff is accessible
Yeah.
to students with disabilities. You guys have been pushing the boundaries. Are you seeing anything about accessibility?
I would be interested in knowing the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that, but yeah, I mean, I wonder how accessible some of these things are. I don't know what you would have a better perspective on this than I would, but I am. Okay. Well, overall, I'm impressed that there are a number of standards. If you're producing a commercial site, you really have to reach a minimal standard of accessibility. So that, hopefully, that will help. But some of the real cutting edge stuff, that's a major concern, yeah.
A lot of this Web 2.0 stuff is based on a kind of concept of micro formats using XML and tiny little, define this and then redefine it here, and then I pick that up and I just decide I want to display all that stuff in a different way. So initially I think it's going to be more difficult for the accessibility issue, but in the long run it may make things easier because of those micro formats. You can say, well, when I have this kind of a piece of a blog, or when I have these things come in from a wiki, I want to change the way I view them this way and run them through a screen reader or run them through a magnifying glass. So
that's a great point. Yeah.
in the long run, it may actually help. In the short run, it's probably going to break everything. This is a disruptive technology to the web.
Yeah. So a lot of ironing out to do before. Yeah. Any final questions?
If you had to recommend like some tips for the group here on how to start this, because when Michael and I talked on the phone, he said, how long did this take you? He said, a whole semester. And if you wanted to leave the group with some tips on how to start, what would be top 5 things you would say?
Oh, well, I would not jump into a full-fledged content management system. If you're interested in this stuff, maybe there's a lot of really good free blogs now that allow you to create your own blog. I would probably start with something like that, a free wiki. Maybe those 2 things alone would be just enough. Just grab what you think you might need for class. Like if a wiki seems appropriate, grab that. If a blog seems appropriate, grab that. A lot of the things that we need in class are already on K-State Online, like the message board and stuff like that. Those are all really well done in K-State Online. So, yeah.
It would probably be helpful if you were to write up a little, this is my experience.
Yeah.
And then let some people know so that we could get access to it.
Yeah.
And that way other instructors that were interested in doing something like this would be able to go out and get your experience.
Yeah, that's a good idea. One thing I'll point you guys to is on Mediated Cultures. Let's see if I can come back to it. I've actually put a tutorial on here under articles, and it's called Getting the Most Out of Web 2.0. And I made it for my students, but some of you might find it interesting as well. It talks about how to get it all set up the way that I have it set up here. So that'd be a good start. And then
So we just go to that website?
yeah, if you go to mediatedcultures.net and then go to articles.
I think what I'll have Michael do is have him contribute to our blog, and that way everybody will have access to the resources. And also some of the information we just talked about, we'll see if we can put it up on the IDT Roundtable website as well, so you all can have access. If you don't know the URL, just give me a buzz or something, and we'll have you hooked up. Well, any more questions? No? Well, this is our last IDT Roundtable for this semester, and I hope to see you all in fall again when we have a whole series. Thank you. Thank you.
we will listen
The
to
Landon
geologists
Lecture
and
Series.
Chemicals are developed.
I would like to take a moment to
There's
congratulate
issue
all of
of,
you who are graduating today with virtual commencement.
Kansas State University's Office of Mediated Education.